Yo, so I caught NBA Today on ESPN earlier, and Malika Andrews and the whole crew had this really candid conversation about the Los Angeles Lakers roster situation. And honestly, they weren't holding back at all. The panel broke down how the Lakers clearly have guys they need to keep around and have stick as key components on this roster. But they also have several players that they absolutely need to move on from, and those guys are pretty much the same names everyone was discussing back in the offseason. Right now, it's still early in the season, so maybe something crazy happens, and one of these guys ends up becoming untouchable. But just from what the NBA Today analysts have seen, due to injuries and performance issues, they think these players need to go. And listen, before we continue breaking down what this means for the Lakers moving forward, if you're enjoying this breakdown and want to see more content like this, just hit that like button real quick. It takes 1 second, but it tells me you want more of these deep dives into everything Lakers. Those likes genuinely help push this content to more fans in the community. So smash that like button right now. Alright, now let's get back into it. Malika started by talking about Rui Hachimura, and to his credit, she acknowledged that Rui has really evolved and adapted in several ways to become that ideal kind of off-ball player, a catch-and-shoot three-point threat who can create for himself a little bit and be a slasher and cutter. If the panel isn't mistaken, Hachimura led the league or was top 3 in scoring off cuts and slashes last season. He's genuinely a guy that the Lakers would love to keep if they could, but Rui is probably their best valued trade chip because of his contract situation. He's a player that other teams would want and who could make sense for contending teams either off the bench or even in a starting role depending on the fit. The NBA Today crew just thinks, given the Lakers' clear need for perimeter defense and athleticism, Rui Hachimura simply doesn't provide any of those things despite how good he is offensively and how on any given night he could be that guy who really elevates and becomes the difference maker. Despite how Rui has really evolved and adapted his game to fit the modern NBA, Malika thinks the Lakers have too many pressing needs to justify holding on to Hachimura and not trading him. That doesn't mean you trade Rui just to trade him for nothing, but if LA can find the right trade and the right move that addresses their weaknesses, the panel thinks Hachimura needs to go. Then there are the other guys according to the breakdown: Gabe Vincent, Max Christie, and Dalton Knecht. Dalton Knecht, specifically, is just lost at this point according to the analysts. They don't think the Lakers are going to be able to find the player he was or get him back to that level. The panel doesn't think Knecht is ever going to be that player the Lakers need him to be again. He's had a lot of opportunities from Summer League all the way through to now, and he just continues to fail to deliver. And it's such a drastic turnaround from his college production. It's unfortunate because the crew wants to see Knecht have success. But Malika thinks, if you're somebody who wants Dalton to succeed and you're a fan of his, you should be praying that he gets traded. She genuinely thinks fans should be begging for him to get traded because that might be the only way he snaps out of this terrible slump and regains his confidence. The panel has seen people saying that Knecht has negative trade value right now. Malika doesn't know about actual negative value. He doesn't have much value, but he does have some. Knecht is a player who fits the mold that most teams want and need. He's still incredibly young, and the NBA Today crew thinks most teams around the league know what everyone knows, which is if Knecht goes to the right team in the right situation, he may bounce back. There are always teams that think they can do better with player development. There are always franchises that think a guy just lost confidence and they need to get that back, and he could be productive for them. But that doesn't mean the Lakers are going to get positive value in return for Knecht at this point. Gabe Vincent again is hurt once more according to the panel. The Lakers just have too many needs, and Vincent is another guy that Malika likes when he's healthy and on his game. He can be a difference maker in the right situations. But the analysts just think Vincent is undersized, and the Lakers desperately need athleticism, perimeter defense, and two-way capability. Gabe Vincent is too hot and cold both on the court performance-wise as well as with injuries and availability. The NBA Today crew just thinks LA needs to move on from him. And then there's Max Christie. The panel said, best ability is availability, and this guy can't stay on the court. Max, when he plays, is actually good. and productive. He's a solid player who plays within his role, doesn't try to do too much outside his skill set, can hit open shots, can be a floor spacer, and can be a lot of things you need role players to be. The problem is, again, you can't rely on Christie or count on him to be available. You don't know if he's ever going to show up or if he's going to play. The Lakers just need to get off these guys according to Malika's assessment. Now the analysts know the immediate pushback people are going to have is, who wants these guys? No one's going to trade for these players. But Malika emphasized there's more to trades than just the names on the back of jerseys. More often than not, trades happen for reasons beyond just player talent. There are salary cap implications to consider. There's dysfunction, or guys just not working in one situation who might thrive elsewhere. There's the reality that some teams just want to retool and re-roster. There's teams that really like certain players and think they have more upside than what another team sees. There are countless reasons why teams make trades that go beyond pure basketball evaluation. But there's a bigger reason now than there ever was, and the NBA Today panel saw it play out this past off-season in particular. Teams and the lengths and desperation that franchises will go through to get off salary commitments. There are a lot of teams underperforming right now, Lakers included, though LA's struggles have been largely due to injury. There are a lot of teams around the league where if things continue trending the way they are, the crew talked about this all off-season. Every year there are teams that thought they were going to be good that aren't, and want to retool. There are teams that don't want to be competitive that end up being kind of good, and want to sell off veterans. And then there are teams that just realize certain guys aren't working out, plus 15 other reasons why trades end up getting done. So to the panel, the Lakers' best asset value is their expiring contracts, because they're limited on other trade chips. The Lakers have their 2031 first-round pick, a couple pick swaps, and second-rounder, but their best tradable assets are their expiring contracts. Los Angeles has over $40 million in expiring contracts on the books. What that does, according to Malika, is now you're going to get to that point where teams start getting in desperation mode around the trade deadline. You're going to start getting to that point where teams feel like they really need to unload certain contracts. The analysts used Miami as a hypothetical example. If the Heat play poorly and want to get off Jimmy Butler's money or another big contract, there are very few teams that will take on that kind of salary without demanding significant assets in return. Few teams can actually put together enough expiring salary to make the deal work financially. Because that's the thing, according to the NBA Today breakdown, if you're Miami or one of these teams trying to shed salary, you don't want to take on a bunch of long-term money in return. You don't want to move off guys to retool only to take on more long-term salary commitments. There are few teams around the league that actually have the expiring contracts and financial flexibility to help other teams get off players they want to move. Or you get a team that has one huge contract. Teams that have one player making $30 million, which is harder to move than a bunch of smaller $10–11 million contracts. With multiple smaller contracts, Malika explained, you could trade two guys to match salary for a $20 million player, or trade each guy individually in separate deals. You could do a Gabe Vincent for a Matisse Thybulle swap. You could do Gabe Vincent for a Haywood Highsmith trade. Or you could package Rui and Gabe Vincent together for someone like Jimmy Butler in a bigger deal. It gives the Lakers more options and flexibility. They can make multiple smaller moves, or they can make one bigger splash. If a team has a guy making $15 million per year that they want to move, the Lakers could take that contract and send back Gabe Vincent or Max Christie and Dalton Connect. That team gets off the money for the next 3 years and brings in expiring contracts, plus a young player in Connect who maybe has some upside they can unlock. The panel said teams would rather pay Connect his $6 million for 1 year than pay their guy $15 million for the next 3 seasons. Things like that start to have real value around trade deadline time. Teams start looking around and thinking they should call up the Lakers and try to pull off a trade. So the NBA Today crew thinks the Lakers are going to be active players at the trade deadline, and they also think other teams are hoping LA is active because it helps facilitate moves around the league. Now that doesn't necessarily mean the Lakers are going to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo or anything crazy like that. According to Malik, she doesn't think the Lakers necessarily need that kind of blockbuster either. The Lakers are actually in pretty good shape overall, despite their record. The analysts have seen a version of this team that they believe can win an NBA championship based on the small sample size early in the season. Obviously, they don't want to overreact to small samples, but they've seen flashes of what this team can be. The panel referenced the game against Minnesota as a great example where they thought, man, this could really be a championship team with guys stepping up and playing well. If LA goes and gets a couple key pieces to address their needs, everything the analysts expected in the offseason would come together. All the concerns they talked about in the offseason remain the same concerns now. Everyone knew going into this season the Lakers had a lack of perimeter defense, a lack of athleticism, and a lack of two-way players. Guess what the Lakers' problems were all preseason, according to Malika? Lack of athleticism, lack of perimeter defense, lack of two-way players. And guess what the Lakers' issues have been through the first 4 games? Lack of defense and perimeter defense, lack of athleticism, lack of two-way play. The NBA Today crew doesn't think any of that is going to magically change with the current roster. They don't think Rui is going to suddenly become an elite defensive player. Dalton Knecht will probably have a random good shooting game if he keeps getting opportunities because he's a shooter, and shooters will have nights where the ball just goes in. But there's a big difference between one random hot shooting night and Knecht being back to being a consistent contributor. Unless something crazy happens with one of these guys, or Gabe Vincent magically starts shooting 40% like clockwork every night, the Lakers are kind of in a spot where they just need to move on from these players. Even if Max Christie turns it around and stays healthy, he's not going to be so good that the Lakers can't trade him, according to the panel. Rui is probably the biggest question mark and the one guy you could argue about. He's probably the player where you don't want to trade him for nothing. It's got to make sense and be for something actually valuable. If you're going to trade Rui Hachimura, it needs to be for a return that helps the team because he is a genuine contributor, whether coming off the bench or starting. You don't want to get rid of Rui just for the sake of getting rid of him. But Gabe Vincent, even if he was playing well, the Lakers have other needs, so he could go. Max Christie, same thing. Dalton Knecht, same thing. Those are guys that no matter what the Lakers would be okay moving on from, according to Malika. Getting off Rui is probably the move that has to make the most sense value-wise. As for Austin Reaves, the NBA Today crew doesn't think the Lakers trade him this season, especially with how elite he's been playing. But even then, the panel doesn't think anyone is truly untouchable outside of Anthony Davis on this team. Reaves would require a significant package in return, and the problem is he's so cheap on his current deal that it would be hard to get value that justifies trading him. The analysts don't think the Lakers would trade Reaves, and they don't think LA necessarily should based on what they're seeing so far this season. There's a lot of season left, obviously, and it's just hard because of his contract value, but Austin is an expiring deal, so it's worth at least mentioning him briefly in these trade conversations. So that was the full NBA Today breakdown of which Lakers players are must-trades before the deadline, with the panel identifying Rui Hachimura, Gabe Vincent, Max Christie, and Dalton Knecht as guys LA needs to move to address their perimeter defense and athleticism issues.